What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Glenda?
Yes.
We have to do a new ad.
We do.
It's a solemn time. Our long-time sponsor of the show, George Kittredge,
Yes.
very, very sadly passed away. And we formerly used to advertise for him his Rowdy Hound boxes.
We did.
So we don't actually know what's happened with Rowdy Hound boxes. You know anything about that?
I looked at the website. It said that they're recalibrating since their founder and boss has passed. But nonetheless, I think that you and I want to honour the memory of George Kittredge anyway. He was a friend to both of us, a hell of a good guy, and he supported us almost immediately. He was on board through and through, and I just don't want any of us to forget George. He was a terrific human being.
So we intend to continue to advertise Rowdy Hound, even though we don't know what's going on with them.
Yep.
In the hopes that they keep going, and that can be a bit of George's legacy that we're able to continue to promote.
I hope so.
In checking it out, we had a look to see, because we're not real good with the sponsorship. So we had a look to see who's actually paying for sponsorship. And we have a list of people to tell you that we support. And the first is our sugar mama, Barbara de Groot.
She's been with us from the start as well. Barbara's been an absolute staple in our...
She's a gem.
She is a gem.
She has a business.
She does. From the Heart Dog Training.
From the Heart Dog Training.
Yeah.
You can check it out. But she supports us as much and more than anybody ever has. So we appreciate you very much, Barbara. Another person who's supported us from the start.
The Einzelwiener.
Einzelwiener.
The Bullfed.
The Bullfed.
Yep.
It's where I get all my stuff.
Yeah.
It is, truly. It's where I get all my dog gear. If I need something, Jason's my first point of call. I don't use his shit website. He has a website. It's dog shit. I just message him directly. You guys probably should use his shit website, but I don't.
because you don't want to message him directly and get his grumpy ire of the day.
Yeah, but do it. Get all your dog stuff from Jason. He's got everything you need. He's got all the shit that you need to train a dog for realty.
Everybody who comes to seminars and looks at meals and asks me meals questions, ask Jason.
Yeah.
Jason can point you in the right direction for getting the meal that's best suited for you.
I really like his leashes. I'm a big fan of his leash pack. That's why I sort of convinced him to do it. But anyway, get your stuff from Einzelwiener.
Yep.
Do you know who has a fantastic website and ships internationally?
My wife?
Your wife,
Yeah.
Canine Pharmaceuticals.
I couldn't imagine her not having a good website, how much of a perfectionist she is.
Well, the products are amazing. My dog merely being alive is a walking testimonial to that. My dog, who I've retired numerous times and has come out of retirement when I've managed to get his body back to healthy. And a big part of that is related to Canine Pharmaceuticals. So check it out, everybody.
I could say so many nice and biased things about Canine Pharmaceuticals and my wife, but what I will say is ignore me. Just look at testimonials. The testimonials speak for themselves. That's where the field trials are working. What makes Narelle's day, and mine as well, is when people are emailing in and sending messages of, well, primarily people have had no hope in the past because just everything that they were trying wasn't working, and now it is. And that is the testament that something is actually really working. And the other thing which I will add, one of the things that Narelle's told me in the past is dogs are incapable of understanding the placebo effect.
Oh, that's a good point.
So you can fake it on a human, but you can't fake it on a dog.
I never thought about that before. That's actually a really good point.
Well, my wife's actually a very smart person.
There you go.
So she's told me that humans are subject to the placebo effect where dogs are not. So it either works or it doesn't on dogs.
There you go. That makes total sense.
Yep.
There's one other person who puts a fair amount of work into this show.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah. Funny about that.
And I have a digital product that you can buy. If you go to my website, seriousdogbusiness.com, right now I've got 2 courses available to you. The Overview, which is a small course where you could learn how I teach.
Yep.
But the other one is the Wave Tops, which is a bigger course. It's everything I know about dog training. Well, it's not everything. It's a lot of what I know about dog training.
Yeah,
Check it
terrific.
out.
Yeah.
$500 dues. That's all it's going to cost you.
I recommend it when people are saying, what do I do? How do I get in the industry? I recommend them to your course.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah.
sir. All right, on with the show. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined today by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, listeners. Hello.
Hello.
Everybody.
Hello in, what do we call it? Doglandia?
Doglandia.
Doglandia.
Oh, dear. Sir, it's been a while. You've been busy.
I have. I've been off doing staff training, getting ready for Christmas. As we do every year, we've got a turnover of young people coming in. So we've always got full-time staff that run the resorts during low season. And during high season, we recruit young people, and some people return. They'll come back from school or wherever they are. Some of these people, in fact, quite a lot of them, which is great, are doing courses like vet nursing and so forth. So we've got people who are learning about the trade and actually getting their practical hours in by going into kennels and doing work with dogs. Not that they're doing any husbandry sort of skills, because they're not required to do that. That's a full-time job. But my role is to go around and start teaching the staff all about animal behaviour, and particularly dog behaviour, and just to make sure that they have an understanding of what happens when they're matching dogs, because we do social boards. Some kennels don't do. They do solo boards. We do social boards. So I teach staff how to pair dogs up, how to match dogs, and what it looks like when they're going to see a problem, instead of just hoping for the best. And when staff are putting dogs together, again, that's a senior role, something that experienced staff do. But that's something that I'm refreshing, and I'm just making sure that even when the younger staff see it, that they can report it quickly. They can go back to their management, back to the leadership, and say, I can see a problem arising between these two dogs, or they started off well, but the compatibility is run out and the dogs aren't enjoying each other's company anymore. There's a problem now.
Can you talk us through that process a little bit? Because I'm actually quite ignorant to that. I've never done that.
When you're doing matching, it's the same thing for people who are running daycare facilities and so forth. You've got to bring dogs in who are reasonably neutral to that pack hierarchy. They're not interested in coming in to stand over another dog or to resource guard anything. They primarily just want to exist with each other. And it's kind of like human society. Like when we look at dogs and we see a lot of things on social media and we see dogs wanting to fight each other, we're looking at problematic dogs like we look at problematic people. Let's put it into human perspective, for example. When you go to nightclubs, pubs and clubs, and there's large groups of people, the vast majority of people are there for a good time. They're there to dance. They're there to meet their friends. They're there to hook up. They're there to forget their troubles, have some drinks, have some fun. Most people are quite sedate. And I know this because I worked on doors for years. So I used to work inside the clubs and I used to vet people before they came in and out. Mate, it was exactly the same thing, almost to a T, when I was vetting people. Like if people were coming in the pub, this is where you'd say to people, nah, sorry, mate, we're full tonight. And you'd let 50 other people in behind them or something like that. So you just have, you'd have your lines where you would, I used to hate getting them when I was a young bloke, but you do the same sort of thing because you just know this person is not the right fit. They don't have that normalized neutrality where you want to let them in because you're letting a wolf into like a sheep's party.
Yeah. Before you keep going, this is important. I have to interrupt. What was your favorite line? Was it just "we're full tonight," and then you'd let other people in afterwards? Because the best one I've ever seen was the guy got told, "Sorry, mate, can't come in. Those are the wrong shoes."
Yeah, we'd say that a lot.
Yeah. Well, what are the right shoes? He goes, "Can't tell you what the right ones are, mate. I can only tell you those are the wrong ones." The dude standing there and he's just wearing normal black leather shoes. He's like, "Sorry, mate, those are the wrong ones."
There was always a bit of a quota on how many, like if large groups of guys came, and especially guys that sort of didn't really, let's say, for example, you've got a bunch of reasonable looking guys that are just there to have some fun and chase some girls or do whatever they want to do. And you can just see this one standout guy who's just not a happy little camper, got a grumpy look on his face and hates the world, bit of a bogan or a redneck if they call them that in the United States. But yeah, you'd pull those lines. You'd just say, "Mate, those shoes are no good for in here. You know, we're a bit more moderate or whatever." And they go, "What do you mean? They're shoes." And they go, "Yeah, they're not the right shoes. They're the type of shoes you turn up to a work site on, not come into a nightclub. You know, you got to dress a little bit more respectable when you're coming in here." And they go, "What do you mean? This is what I always wear." And I said, "Yeah, that's the problem, mate. That's day gear. That's not nightclub gear." And I'd say, "Anyway, I'm not going to debate it with you. We have a dress code. You're not following it. You can't come in."
Yeah. Yeah. So you say that to dogs as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just when the dogs come in, you just say, "Yeah, sorry, mate, your colour scheme on your
collar."
Yeah, the wrong collar, or don't like the colour configuration of your coat. So I'm sorry.
You're off. Okay. So I derailed you. So you're back to matching dogs. You're figuring out like who goes with who.
And again, referring to my example that I was using with people in a nightclub or people in mass gatherings, you want to look at the behaviours of those dogs and ask yourself a non-rushed question as well. You want to take your time and look at those dogs properly and say, would this characteristics that this dog is displaying fit the group mentality that we've got inside? And if the answer is yes, you've still got to carefully introduce those dogs, take them in on lead, see how they behave, because things can change radically because sometimes dogs don't have experience with other dogs. And even if you do get a somewhat neutral, playful type of dog, it might be a dog that wants to hump other dogs and therefore create problems. Same sort of thing. Like if you've got a guy you let in a nightclub and he's run around pinching people in the arse, before you know it, you've got a full-scale war happening inside. And you've got to make those same decisions when you're teaching matching behaviors with dogs as well. You've got to make sure that these dogs are – compatibility is the key word that I'm searching for. You need compatibility across the board. Once you teach staff how to identify that, then we usually go for walk-in kennels or we'll get dogs in yards together and we'll introduce another dog that they say could be a little bit of an anomaly into the group. And we bring the dog on lead. We just see how the dog behaves. If that dog is interested but not excessive in its behavior, then we'll allow the dog to come off. Usually at that stage, I've got something like a rake inside with me or something like that, just to not to hit the dogs or to do anything untowards to them, but just to create a little bit of space between the dogs. It's really good for creating spatial pressure because dogs will move apart from each other when you move it over near them. So I'll take that in there.
So expand on that a minute. So you've got like a leaf rake thing, like a big plastic headed
big fan
spreader.
Rake. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'll have that in the kennel like a walking stick and just you put that between dogs if they're like hard staring or fixating at each other or something like that. Like how do you use that?
There's two items that I always take into the yards with me. One is a bed, a hard bed, and the other is a rake. And the hard bed is like if I've got a problem or even if, let's say for example, you've got one dog in there and the dog decides you're not catching me and you're not going to lay hands on me and the dog starts arcing up at you, you can protect yourself with a bed immediately. You can literally hold that dog off. And I had at Dural one year, there was a dog that one of the staff, they didn't lock the kennel properly and the dog got out into the breezeway and he was a American Bulldog, but he was enormous, the biggest American Bulldog that I've seen and a really badly behaved one too, quite aggressive. It was the last time he ever stayed at the kennels. I just deemed him too much of a risk for the staff. But he got into the hallway and the girls saw him on camera. They said to me, "Oh my God, that dog is in the breezeway." And I said, "Don't go in there." I took a bed in, I opened the door and he was coming down the hallway at me. And mate, he had intentions when he came down. But when I had the bed, all I did was basically stood behind it and just hip and shouldered him all the way back down to his room, got him back in there and closed the doors. And I said to the staff, watch what I'm doing. Like I'm not asking you to do this, but watch what I'm doing. In the event that you are stuck in these sort of situations, watch what I'm doing, see how I manage this situation and how safe I can make it without putting myself at risk. And I said, because this dog can't get to me. He just cannot make contact with me at all. But there's things that you've got to do as well. Like you still need to manage your shield or your bed to make sure the dog can't push it out of your hands, can't squeeze around you, can't get around you, and you don't find yourself trapped in those sort of situations as well. So you can still mismanage that and create a problem for yourself. But I said, watch the way I'm doing it. Watch the way I use my feet at the base of it so I can also create like a deadpan shield that the dog just can't push under. He can't push over it. He can't jump over it. He can't make contact with me because the environment just doesn't allow for it.
That's interesting, mate. Let me just talk on that because I'm pretty good at that because that's something we do in like protection work, right?
Yeah.
So we have to teach a dog how to defeat offend. Initially, we teach a dog how to defeat offend by just showing them like if someone blocks low, go high. If they block high, go low. Then it's kind of just persistence, right? Like, and you got to be really careful when you're teaching fended because if you keep a dog out too long, you can sort of crush a dog's spirit a little bit and show it like it's not going to get through. So once we are doing an active fend where we're keeping a dog out, we have to be careful. Like, you just block them for one attempt and then they're in on the second and then you build that and build that. We want to get to the point where they're really doing it. But it is interesting in that like as a decoy, we practice that a lot and we're very good at it to the point where we have to intentionally let the dog in so that it maintains that persistence and we'll continue to do that in the real world. Did you get good at that as a decoy or is that just from doing it for realsy? Like where do you think your skill set in that came from? The practice in the suit or the real world doing it in a kennel?
All of the above. That's one of those all of the above.
Yeah.
That's question D that you tick in that box, all of the above.
Yeah.
Because I think there's nothing that quite prepares you for dealing with aggressive dogs than training aggressive dogs and, modifying and channeling and controlling aggression. That's a skill that you, me, and thousands of men and women doing around the world. we've talked about this a myriad of times with people and between ourselves. You can do a really good job of it, or you can do a shit job of it, and you can channel all the wrong types of behaviors. So with the example that you were talking about before, you're teaching that perseverance builds hope. There's a breakthrough moment where you're going to get through, like because you're punching through, a hole is going to open up and you're going to get through. That's kind of like boxing as well. Like if you're fighting an opponent and they've just got this really intense guard, or you hit them with your best hit and they just smile at you just thinking, holy shit, and it just crushes you. But if you've pummeled somebody and they're guarding their head and you start working down below and ripping into their ribs, and then they drop their guard and then you punch them in the face a couple of times, left-right combination, and all of a sudden you can see their knees wobbling. There's nothing that builds a savage in you like seeing that sort of thing. Like as soon as you know that's happening, you're ripping into that person. Like every ounce of energy, your adrenaline tears through your body, your cortisol level, everything. Just you turn into a monster and you just start wailing on the person because you're thinking, yeah, it's working. I'm breaking through. And that's what we're teaching dogs as well. Like we're building monsters by teaching them those sort of things. Whereas what I'm doing in those sort of situations for staff is teaching them perseverance. It diminishes, like it diminishes hope.
Yeah, so you're the total opposite. You just fend them out, keep them out. And a dog that really keeps going after you fended them 2 or 3 times, holy fuck, that's a persistent and properly aggressive dog. Hey, if someone's rando pet has a crack at you and you shield them, and they might have another crack and you shield them, overwhelmingly, most dogs are giving up at that point. If you've got a dog that you block with the bed 2 good attempts and he keeps going, you can probably count on being into that for a long time. Hey, because I know that from teaching it. When I'm teaching a dog to do this, dogs will quit really quick when they've been fended. You've really got to be careful to allow them that persistence. So overwhelmingly, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the scared little pet dog who's having a freak out in the kennel, he's only going to hit you a couple of times before he then starts thinking, well, this ain't working. I got to try something else and get the fuck out of here. It's not that he's actually trying to fight you. But in this instance, like you're talking about that bully, like if he was persistently going at it, like he meant it, right? Like that you would determine that in that struggle.
Mate, he was the most persistent. That's why I said we had to terminate his allowability to come back into the facility, just the sheer determination of that dog. Even when I was putting him in yards while he was still there, I was the only one, I'd go and open up the back door, open up the breezeway in the kennel. I'd open his door. He'd come out. He'd have a couple of cracks at me. And then I'd just drive him down the line and push him out. But even the way that I was with him was quite overtly pushy. And I never hurt the dog. Like if you ever watch me, you could never accuse me of saying you hurt the dog, like you've smashed that shield into his face or anything like that. That never happened. All I did was prevented him from getting to me and just robbed him of all hope that he was ever going to do it.
Yeah.
But, like
you're both safe.
He would try 3, 4, maybe 5 attempts to like he'd go low, he'd come up high, he'd try pushing through the side, and he had intent every time. Towards the end, before the owners came back, I mean, he'd probably have 1 or 2, and they were pretty lousy attempts after that because I literally wore him down, and he just realized, it's just better to run out the back and avoid all this conflict, which was great. It's exactly what I wanted him to do, is just learn, mate, just avoid it altogether. Just run out the back. I'll close the door. You get to go out there, have an hour to yourself, go and poo, run around in the yard, do whatever you need to do, and then you come back in. But even the son of a bitch, I'd let him back in. He'd do the same sort of thing. Like, I'd open the door and I'd have the shield and I'd be backing away from the door and I'd stop near his room. He'd still have 1 crack of defiance before he'd go back into his room. And there was something I liked about him doing that. Like, I kind of thought, you are a tough bastard.
Yeah. What do you think triggers that? You reckon that's like habit or just sort of a part of him that wants you to know that I never really quit? Like, that part, like that dog that has to have the last word, or just like, I never really quit. I would get you. You just make sure you still have that shield because I will bite you if I get the chance. Like he just wanted to remind you of that every time.
I actually don't know. I just don't know what was going through his head. I just think he was such a dumbass that he just didn't get it.
So you think he maybe is just trapped in the cycle? Like, this is what we do. You hold that, I slam into it, and then I go into the kennel. Like, this is like, because you get that from dumb dogs, right? They're just like, this is our routine, me and you, and this is how we see it through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it just became habit to him. And even though it wasn't really rewarding and I was sort of, like I was robbing any outcome from him, he still kind of just enjoyed having the fight. It's funny, thinking of him, it reminds me of this time. We had this guy that we had to eject from a pub once, and he was a big dude, big corn-fed country boy. tough as nails. And it took 3 of us to get him out. Like, we had to really bind him up and get him out. And one guy had his legs. I had him in a wrist lock. We lifted him up and we took him out. And even on the way out, he goes, I'm only going out because I want to. I actually laughed when he said it. I was carrying him. You get a bit heated up and a bit steamed at the time. But when he said that to me, I actually laughed. And I just said, mate, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I said, as we're carrying you out, that you fucking had the defiance to say that. And he goes, yeah, well, that's how it is, mate. It took 3 of you fucking pussies. and I just said, yep, okay. And I said, all right, go home. He came back the next week. He was there and I said, hey, mate, listen, with the trouble we had last time, he goes, mate, listen, I was off my head. I was on drugs. I was a complete and utter fuckwit. He shook my hand. He was a nice guy. He goes, I'm not coming in tonight. He goes, I know you probably don't want me here. And he goes, but I just want you to know that's not me. I'm not that type of guy. And I said, if you can come back again and control yourself and stay away from whatever demons you got, you're welcome back. And I said, if you ever do that again, you're banned for life. And he goes, yep, no worries, mate. And he goes, the way you treated me, mate, was full of respect. He goes, I appreciate that. He goes, even when you laughed at me, and he goes, I was angry for a bit. And he goes, but I'm really, really sorry, mate. You were doing your job and I was a dickhead and blah, blah, blah. He came back. He was the nicest guy ever, you know, and he was an ally after that. And I had a few people like that. If there's any strife, they'd say, do you want a hand? I say, no, mate, you can't. You're not insured. You're not allowed to do anything. And they'd go, I got your back, mate, if you ever need it. But that was funny. And I associate that bully with that guy. Because there were times where he was in the yard and he was quite peaceful, like I'd watch him sitting in the yard just out of curiosity to say, what's he going to do? And I'd walk by the fence and he'd just look at me and then he'd go off and he'd keep me on his blind side, but he'd be pissing on the fence looking at me. And
Matt, I think that's one of the things that some people find that's difficult to rationalize if you haven't worked with a dog that's a real dickhead. Those dogs that are like, I enjoy conflict and fighting people, and that spins a dial for me that I just really enjoy that feeling. So like that feeling is self-reinforcing. And so maybe that's the situation, right? Like he gets out because he's just looking for trouble, finds trouble with you, you deflect him with the bed. In his mind, that could be the equivalent of playing tug, right? Because he's just like, I want some conflict. We both came out okay in this. Everyone's fine. He doesn't know he's getting banned from the kennel because of it, and then he has to find somewhere else to stay. And then as he comes in, that sort of, it's probably ritualized at that point, right? Like him and you, that's just the relationship that you have. You block him with the bed and he has to just mouth off to you and hit it that one time. And then he goes and everybody's happy with that sort of situation. I think that's the kind of stuff that can be real. If you haven't worked with that kind of dog, and I don't mean like an XL bully or something, but I just mean a dog that's so conflict driven. Like they're really like, this is the character I'm playing. This is who I am. I enjoy this level of conflict. And I'll just have it sort of casually with you. And that might mean, when he goes to a new place, if they meet him differently, if they have different interactions, he might be a different dog, right? Like I think, and that's one of the things we sometimes see is people tell us, oh, my dog got kicked out of here and he does great at the other place. And you're like, yeah, well, your dog had an experience here that made him think and feel in a particular way here. And if he didn't have that experience elsewhere, then he goes there a different character. Like I think we often, dogs especially, play the character they're assigned. They read the role, they read the room and go like, righto, you guys think of me like that. You're treating me like that. I'll act like that. But when you go somewhere else and they're like, they don't know you, they don't treat you in a particular way, they take you at face value, your behavior can be quite different.
While you were talking about that, it conjured up thoughts of an earlier story that you've told on this podcast and shared with me previous to even that. But it's also something that I talk to the staff about when we're talking about dog behaviors and why they do certain things. It's bringing up the memory of your Schnappy the crocodile story when you were being and how you said, like you used to make up ways to extend the interrogation because it was better than being locked in the dark, nude and listening to Schnappy for multiple hours on end. And I think sometimes
for some context, I think because we haven't spoken about that in literally years.
You better.
There's so many listeners that'll be like, why is Pat locked in a cage in the nude listening to Schnappy?
Well, I'm not going to kink shame you.
Because I'm a freak. That's why. Because I'm into weird shit. Yeah, I'm into weird shit. Carry on, Glenn. I did.
Do the bullet point.
Part of going to Special Forces is doing a resistance to interrogation course, which is a fucking disaster of a course because it's not pass or fail. You're just doing it. It's an actual course for the interrogators. But as a result, you get captured and fucking treated very poorly. Mine went for about 58 hours or something like that. And when you're not being interrogated, you don't know this because you're blindfolded, handcuffed and nude the whole time. And you're You're actually, since you're in Australia, like you're actually in Canungra. You don't know they fly you to this jungle in Queensland and you're in a shipping container, but you don't know that. And so you just know that you're in a dark room, you're blindfolded, you can't see anything. And to make sure that you go fucking crazy, they played on my course the German version of Snappy the Little Crocodile the whole time. So 58 hours, you're just sitting there listening to Snappy the Little Crocodile, cross-legged, sitting on the floor in a dark room. And the only time that you're not is when you're getting interrogated. And a big part of that is to make you want the interrogation to go longer, because the interrogation is like, it's negative reinforcement. You're under pressure the entire time when you're sitting there, and there's a huge relief of pressure. So you're like, thank fuck I'm in this interrogation. And you want to avoid it by going back down the hole. So I'm not just a freak who likes to hang out nude in the dark listening to Snappy the Little Crocodile, but like, you know, it developed a kink in me, so I do that. And, you know, I got a big payout from Army for making me crazy like that. So it's like,
fucking hell.
Oh, dude. All right, carry on, sir.
So the parallel to that is that, you know, some dogs are sitting in that kennel for a long period of time, and that's not a life that they're accustomed to or used to. Like some dogs are fine. I would say most dogs are. Most dogs are very malleable, and they have a bit of a freak out when they first come and they're not experienced to any form of kennel life. And they go, oh, holy shit, this is so different than what I'm used to. And the first couple of night, let's say night, might be a bit rough for the dog. And living on site for as many years as I did, you'd hear the dogs protesting at night saying, I'm scared, I don't know where I am. There's lots of smells, it's different. It's not the couch or the bed that I'm used to sleeping on. So the dogs get a little stressed over it. But the malleability in dogs allows them to adjust quite quickly and rapidly. It's usually the owners who keep setting them off and create more problems for them. So when their mummies are sitting there in the background going, oh, it's all right, darling, it's all right, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then the dogs are repetitively reinforced for that sooky behavior, then they prolong it. That's the word I'm searching for.
Yeah.
With some dogs, they're fine. You get dogs like Labradors, and you watch a couple of Labradors that have been matched beautifully, and they'll be playing with each other, totally oblivious to the world because they're both having a fucking room party together. Some dogs are just sitting on their bed. Other dogs are pacing around. It depends on the type. But, you know, I think that bully was just brooding in there, just waiting for an opportunity to do something. But it doesn't take away, it doesn't highlight the fact that he was a problematic dog, an enormous risk potential. And I've done courses in risk assessment, being in security as well. And that's one of the things that you do when you're doing evaluations that you should be doing. That's one of the other things that I teach staff to do as well is risk assessment, like have a look at the dog. So I'm not only teaching the staff that work in the kennels, I'm also teaching the managers and the reception staff because they're front of house. They're seeing the dogs when they're in reception. So there's been dogs now that have come in that reception have said, no, sorry, your dog, it's not wearing the right pair of shoes. So its nails aren't clipped nice enough. There is a chain of continuity there that's got to be followed all the way through because somebody can just press a button and say, yeah, no worries, you know, take the money, put the dog in the kennel. And then it's, you know, young staff that go in there to feed them that find out they've been chewed up by a dog. So we don't want that to happen. And primarily, getting back to my role and what I'm doing, that's what I teach the staff, how to recognize and how to adjust to that and how to follow like a standard operation procedure. So I keep adjusting them as we're going along. Like anytime the staff are raising problems for me or, you know, as I'm going around talking to them and looking at sites and seeing how they're going and whatever pain points they have, I just keep making adjustments to everything. I just look at everything and say, all right, I'm going to amend the SOPs. I just did recently. I just wrote a 5-page SOP just on some of those principles alone so the staff could know what to do in a pinch. So it's just a short form version just to say, okay, if this happens, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then if all else fails, take a video of it and send it to me or Zoom me live and I can have a look if you're in a different state or if it's local, I'll come down and have a look at it myself. You know, there's sometimes I'll go in the kennels and I'll say to the staff, come in with me and let's make this an education point. There's been times, not often, but there's been times where, you know, I've put the bite suit on to do an extraction with a dog and just let the dog nail me. Yeah. There was a shepherd at one of our locations that nailed a few staff. So I just went in there with a bite suit. He hammered me a couple of times and then he just looked at me in the eyes and had that, oh shit sort of look, like my 1-2 combination.
Didn't work the way it usually does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My 1-2 combination failed. And people said, oh, did you whack him or anything like that? And I said, no. It's not about that. I said, I just slipped him on the lead because he already failed. You can see the devastation in the look of the dog and you see it in people as well. You know, I remember when just doing amateur work when I was involved in fighting, whenever you hit someone hard or get hit hard yourself, it has a real come to Jesus moment. Like you really evaluate everything about life. I remember one time I was fighting this guy and he socked me square in the face. And I thought it was just a freak shot. I just thought, I was in a wrong position. But then he hit me with another one. And I realized, no, he fucking hits like his hands are made out of iron. It scared the fuck out of me. And I lost the fight because I couldn't get that out of my head. I just couldn't stop thinking about how hard he hit. And all I had to do was just avoid it, avoid it. And I mean, he left even my coach said to me, he goes, mate, there were so many openings, so many things you could have slipped into and fucking, ripped into him. And he goes, but he just allowed the intimidation to happen. And it's funny, when the psychology hits you in those sort of areas, and especially when you're immature to it, like you're in a learning process yourself, like it's funny how your brain reacts to that. Like all of the training that you're doing, and you go back to instinctual things, like you go back to sloppy fighting or literally just giving up. And that's what I want the dogs to do in those sort of situations. I just want them to look at me and go, holy shit, and just give up.
Yeah.
And then,
well, hang on. Let's expand on that, because there was an interesting post in our discussion group this week. It was Casey posted, and it was a screenshot from a well-known force-free trainer claiming that when a dog goes over threshold, no learning happens in that moment. Casey's point, and it's what you're talking about now, is for sure when a dog goes over threshold and bites you in the kennel, that is not a time for, that's not a situation we want to create. And that is not a time to be thinking, all right, I'm going to punish this biting for having happened. But by fuck is the dog going to learn in that moment? What a stupid thing to say, that a dog can't learn when it's over threshold. Learning happens, and learning happens so fucking seriously that it is very, very hard, sometimes bordering impossible, to undo that learning. That's how PTSD happens. How someone could not realize that is fucking beyond me and consider themselves an expert in aggression. But so those moments where you go into the kennel and a dog decides fuck this, I'm so scared, I'm going to nail you. And you can just take that bite and be like, hey man, that's not going to push me away. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to bring you out through here. Me and you are going to work together whether you want to or not. That is, in that moment, the learning moment for that dog is astronomical, right? You would see that you surely, I've done it plenty of times where you put yourself in a position where you're like, hey, there's a huge risk here because this dog is in the kennel or it's in someone's house or it's somewhere. I have to get it out and control it safely. I can't get a muzzle on it without potentially being bitten, or even if I am trying to get the muzzle on, I'm going to put on my protective equipment. If the dog bites me, I can just look him in the eyes and be like, hey man, we're not doing that in this moment, rather than having to run away or deal with the bite or give him the space that he's trying to get via that bite. So it's absolutely not a situation that we're ever looking to create. But when we're in that situation, the way that we deal with it is going to be so permanent. And if you're the guy that goes into the kennel and the dog snarls and snaps at you and you drop the bed and run away, you're only making that way harder for the actual dog trainer who has to go in there later on and deal with that actual problem, right? I don't know. What do you think on that?
Just to go back on that comment, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. I mean, if a dog is over threshold, there is still learning moments happening all the time. The only way that you can...
Profound learning moments that
yes,
are fucking
a single
permanent.
event sometimes, that's the issue. The only way that you could ever rescue yourself from a comment like that is if you said if the dog was having an amygdala hijack. And if the dog's having an amygdala hijack, it's having an out-of-body experience. It's like a drowning person. And this is an example I use in the presentation I'm doing to staff, was we talk abundantly about how dangerous and how deadly a drowning person is. And if you go in to rescue a drowning person, there's 2 corpses in the river that day. Unless you have training and flotation, it doesn't matter who that person is. It doesn't matter. I'm sure I've used this example before, but it doesn't matter who that person is to you. They have no recognition of you. All they're thinking about, all their brain is wired to do there is get out of the water, is get to safety. They can scramble up on top of you, and that they think that moment is getting them out of water. They're holding you underwater and not thinking a thing about it. They're not looking at you and going, oh, that's my daughter, or that's my husband, or that's the person I love most in the world. None of that happens. You can say that in those sort of situations, and that is very seldom the case when you're going into a kennel that you're seeing a dog having a complete amygdala hijack. They do happen, and when you come across them, you've got to understand that that dog is completely, when you use the example, out of its mind. It is out of its mind. Everything, the complete capability of the mind to control itself, the capability of any rational thinking has dissipated. It'll return in time, but it is completely dissipated at that time. So you are dealing with a very primal, raw entity at that time. It's the same thing with people. Like if you ever see somebody who is genuinely hysterical, you got to understand that that person is not in control of what they're doing. And that is not a teachable or a learning moment there, because there's no brain function to actually comprehend what's going on. But if you're over threshold, like if you just, like if you're having a bit of a hissy fit about something, yeah, sure, you learn. I mean, I've seen plenty of dogs that have learned in those sort of high states of arousal before, where like I've gone into a kennel and the dog's having a bit of a moment about it. But when the dog realizes this isn't working for me, then you can see the dog experimenting with options. And that's when I know I'm not dealing with an amygdala hijack. I'm dealing with a dog that, yes, is over threshold, of course. Like the dog it's more risky, it's more flighty, there's more potential of being bitten by that dog. Like you can see the dog's eyes darting around like, oh, yes, I could do this, or I could try this, or I could run there, or I could retreat to the back, or I could just try and hide under the bed. There's construction and there's comprehension going on during that time. So there is learning, and they are teachable moments.
And in your 40 years on the tools, intentionally making dogs aggressive and stopping aggression, like you're fucking expert in it. How many times have you seen a dog that you would say is in that full amygdala hijacked and is just a management case in that moment?
Very small percentage. But what I might add is it's probably increasing at the moment, because I think the general disposition of dogs is getting weaker, and therefore the escalation through their thresholds is increasing. And that's always a concern for me, because when I'm talking about this and when people are listening to me telling these stories, these aren't working dogs. We're not talking about law enforcement or defense dogs or anything like that. We're talking about mummy and daddy dogs. We're talking about pet dogs that are in backyards with kids, and in most situations are just fine. But because we've changed the environment just enough, the dog is now thinking, I don't know how to deal with this, so I will try a completely different way, because everything that I knew about life has shifted dramatically. Using your example before, like I said, I use that example of you and Schnappy when I'm talking to the staff, because I said when Pat told me this story, it was an aha moment for me, because I started thinking, oh yeah, in a situation like this, if a dog is in an environment like that bulldog was, he's probably thinking, like I've been stuck in this kennel for a while now, and this is the most exciting thing that's happening all day, is I get some levels of arousal here. I get to bully a guy, I get to be tough because I'm a tough dog, and I get to, like scare him and try and push him around a little bit. This is the most fun I'm having all day. But it's not that I wanted to reward him in that either. All I wanted to do was just teach him efficiency of just, instead of coming right and going at me in the shield, go left and walk out the door. If I had him for another week, I think he would have volunteered to do that by himself. And even just watching him and just seeing how he wore down over time, like the staff would say to me, geez, he's so much better. Like every time you go in there, he's so much better. And I said, yeah, but the potential of risk from him, I said, he only has to get one bite on you, and then, like it resets everything all over again.
That's the terrifying thing with those big bullies, is when they do bite, they fucking bite proper.
Oh, yeah.
And there's not much you can do to stop them at that point when they're that big and that strong.
Yeah, the risk is enormous.
We're still going down this rabbit hole because I asked you about the bed and the rake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we haven't got to the rake.
So with the rake, it's very comparative to the bed in that, like, if I've got a couple of dogs that are, and I think David McKelson at ProDog, he uses a very similar item, except it's like a pole with a round item on it. So it doesn't look like a rake. It doesn't look like a garden implement. So people don't go in there and go, oh, you're hitting a dog with a rake, because people are weird and they're getting weirder and stranger.
Well, people have been coached to think that everything that dog professionals do with dogs is abuse.
It's about
people have been coached to think that.
Yeah, you're right. You're
they've
right.
been coached by the fake dog professionals that what real dog professionals do in dog training is abuse to the dogs. And that's going to come back and bite those people in the ass when their own secret dog training they do when the cameras aren't rolling fucking goes down.
Yeah, well, I mean, effectively, they're just charlatans who are making money out of creating fear in people, which, it works. Yeah. Fear is a great motivator, and it's also a good money spinner. And that these people realize I'm a shit dog trainer, but I'm good at scaring the shit out of people for money. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right, 100%. getting back to the point, when you're using it, like all you're doing is you're pretty much putting it between the dogs when the dogs are showing true interest. So take, for example, we've got a dog that's come into a neutral group of dogs who are enjoying each other's company, who are playing, who've just got, you can just see this wave of energy over the dogs where they're just enthusiastic. They love each other's company. They're playing with each other. They're chasing each other around. They're doing all these sort of things. But you bring a dog in that, let's say, for example, it's not aggressive. It's just overly playful and excessive, and it's humpy. That sort of dog, that's throwing a cat amongst the pigeons sometimes. It will start one dog off and then other dogs will come and investigate. And before you know it, that's usually when you'll see the dynamics of the group change. So that's the things that you've got to be on alert for. And that's when tools like a rake or the other example that I was using before, you just put that in between those sort of dogs. Generally, let's say 99 times out of 100, the dog will see the rake coming between them and they'll just move away from it. It's almost like throwing reverse polarity in a magnet. They'll just move in the other direction. And it's perfect for doing those sort of things. Even when you're walking into an area, you know how dogs charge at the fence? Like let's say you've got 15 dogs in a yard. I was just even showing the staff, like if I come in here and I just use the rake at the front, I could hold the door open and all the dogs were just standing there looking at me, not trained, but this is a training example as well, but they'd never been previously trained for this because they'd all try and rush the door or jump up on you. But I just used the rake and I just said, it's not hitting him. You don't even really have to touch him with them. I can just scratch it along the ground and they'll just hold space. I'd do that. I'll hold the door open, stand back, and they go, holy shit, like, how does this work? And I said, people have been doing this for decades. I said, there's daycare people that are like on a fucking professor's level that are doing this way better than I am. Like, they're so fucking good at it because it's their job. It's what they do 5 days a week. They're so proficiently incredible at them that I've learned skills from them. And this is where I picked it up from. I said, we all borrow things from each other. These are the skills that I borrowed from other people and I'm showing it to you now. So when you are doing this and when you're going into a room, instead of being harassed by dogs and having them jump, piss and shit all over you, you can walk in nicely and have the dogs all go, oh, this is the way that we're doing it from now on. And I said, it's just teaching a en masse calm greeting where the dogs are all going, yeah, cool, no worries. You're bringing a dog in. We'll all wait here enthusiastically for you to come in with that dog and then we'll come over and say hello and then we'll meet the dog. Rather than having 10 dogs all rush over and create an issue, you let the dog come in, you let the dog adjust, or you might break it down into a smaller group. You usually escalate it as you're going along and increase the volume of dogs and see how they're going. But bring the dog in. If the dog is adjusting nicely, you take the dog off lead, you give it a trial period, you assess the dog, you continue to assess the dog, and if the dog's fine, you just go about your business. Somebody stays and monitors the group, somebody goes off and gets other dogs or puts dogs away for rests or whatever you're doing, and you can literally have a beautiful accommodation of dogs. Terrigal, the resort here on the Central Coast, they do an enormous daycare up there. There was a day there the other day where there was like 30, 40 little dogs all running around together. And they had all the staff to accommodate it. Like they had, I think they had 4 or 5 staff out there with groups of dogs and just watching them and monitoring them and so forth. Not one issue at all. Dogs were loving each other's company, playing on the agility equipment, sitting in the shade with some of the other staff. Some dogs would run over and sit with one staff member, then they'd run over and have a play, and you'd have this little rotation going around, and then there'd be staff coming in to swap some dogs in, take some dogs back out, take some dogs down to the pool. Mate, it is like a well-oiled machine. It's so efficient the way that Alex and her team all do it down there. I loved watching it. Like I was training some dogs there. So I think there was me and Tian. We were down there together and we were training dogs off on the sideline while all the daycare dogs were running around and, dogs were running up to our dogs, and that's what we wanted. We want our dogs showing neutrality towards all that energy and all that stimulation going on. But the daycare staff are doing an amazing job. And that's what daycare staff around the world do when they're really good at reading principal behaviors and they understand how to use things like the rakes, how to create spatial pressure, just to keep the dogs at bay and to say, hey, calm down, just relax, just chill out, mate. Like you're just being a little bit over the top. And it's great for that. It's just great to create that spatial pressure where you walk in and say to the dog, all right, you and that dog have had enough. It's escalating. It's creating too much attention. You are effectively a shepherd and you are patrolling your flock continuously. You're making sure that there is an even tempo amongst the group, and that tempo never rises. It's not so much if it falls. If it falls in a fear issue, then again, you've got to address that issue. But it's about making sure that you've got, and using that phrase, even tempered. You're just making sure that everybody is existing on the same wavelength together. And again, mate, in crowd control, it is exactly the same thing. I remember a nightclub I used to run in Melbourne with a group of guys and girls as well. We had a really crack team there. There were times where I'd see in an area there'd be something going on. I didn't even have to say anything. I'd be about to reach for my radio, and my crew was so good at doing their job. Like I could see them cutting through the group like wolves running through a wheat paddock. You just see people separating, and then they'd get in there, they'd de-escalate the situation nicely, and they'd just either cool it or they would remove. And, you know, but you could see when the tempo was starting to rise, when you could start to see like the means average of the group identifying there was a problem, like you'd just see everybody, it looked like waves in an ocean where they'd just be evenly bobbing up and down. But whenever there was a problem, all heads would turn to that problem. You could see it was like a freeze, and you could see friction. You could even feel the temperature in the air starting to rise. It's funny when you're in those moments, you would know what I mean. You know what? For you, it was a far, far, far more extreme situation, like where people are actually shooting each other and bombing each other. Ours were just fisticuffs, but it's still people trying to hurt people. But like in a situation like that, the crew would cut in, they'd get in there, they would remove the problem person, and you would see the sea going back to normal again, the waves just bobbing around peacefully and people getting about their business. Same thing when you're involved in daycare, when you're involved in matching, when you're involved in pairing dogs. And I guess the thing for me is that's my shtick. That's what I'm really, really, really good at work, is helping people understand this is how to do it. And again, mate, the fortunate thing for me is I've got some really killer key staff members who, you know, I don't have to train them. In fact, there'd be areas where I'd ask them questions to reiterate my knowledge or to improve my knowledge. And I do frequently. I mean, you're a fool if you don't. Like if you can see someone smarter than you and better than what you're doing, not to have a moment to pick their brain to say, that's interesting. What did you do there? How did you do that? Can you show me? Which is something that I like to do with the staff if they're doing something that I haven't seen or it's novel, but not in a way that it's not working or not in a way that I couldn't replicate it or show other staff. But if it's novel and I can think, hey, this is something that we need to integrate into our systems here. We need to show everybody how to do this because this is something that is going to radically improve our systems of getting dogs in and out safely and having a beautiful, harmonious set of dogs working nicely together. So I love that. I love that when I see newer generations come out because it is their time. It's the time of younger people to rise and start taking responsibility in these sort of things. This is why you and me and scores of other people around the world are teaching people, is to say it's your time. You're the newer generation of people. It's time for you guys to rise and take responsibility and start developing systems and networks so you can teach the next generations under you and so on, passing the mantle down to every other generation. Because I used an example last episode about the every 5 years, like I was complaining about it. I'm complaining about the squawking babies that never grow up, like they're always crying and always creating conflict. But out of some of those crying babies, you get some fucking incredible adults that come out of it as well.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
like watching them go through their growth pattern is fascinating and wonderful. And you know that you're leaving a legacy of the people who entrusted it to you to then pass it down to the next generation of people who will then pass it down to the next generation. And again, you know, to bring her name up again, Melanie Uda, this is wonderful when we get actual people in our network who are truth tellers in the story as well, who can say, I know there's a lot of confusing material out there. I know there's a lot of people that are selling fear for cash and steering you down a wrong path. Here's a light in the darkness that you can actually gather your wits, because for a long time, you've been made to feel stupid, like there is a world stage of people who are trying to dumb you down and make you codependent on the wrong type of people. But really, the strength lies within you. You have the capability to witness these things and see formation and see structure and see capability if you're a reasonable, intelligent, and willing participant in this as well. So that does fill me with hope, and spending a little bit of time walking around with the staff. And also, the wonderful thing is, you know, like we've had some real problems in the past, but when I've been going around now, they're so appreciative of you stepping in to help them, going through the little workshops, pulling the dogs out, getting them to do it, watching them. You do it, they do it, you do it, they do it, you do it. They're just full of enthusiasm and appreciation. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about it, is having good people who aren't there just to throw a spanner in the works. They're actually there to improve the job, to improve the conditions overall. So everybody benefits from it. It's not just one person that's getting a namesake. It's the entire group. They're doing it for the entire group. And I just see that as so selflessness. I really appreciate it. I loved it. I was having a ball with them until I got sick. That wasn't fun.
Well, it sounds like you had a good time.
I did.
One thing you just said, it made me think, we record, and sometimes it can be a week to even 2 weeks before an episode comes out. And when we recorded that one about the outrageous online behavior of people, we see it pointed at Dr. Melanie Uda. I was like, oh, you just like, that might be old news by the time it comes out, but holy fuck, it wasn't. It's still escalating, like even as we record this. I'm seeing the way that people are behaving online. But that's another topic for another day. It sounds like you had a fun time there, man. I like seeing you. You look happy, like now that you're so much more on the tools. You're training so many more dogs and people and getting to do it. You look really happy.
Mate, I think part of understanding who you are, that beautiful Socrates quote, know thyself. It's a very confronting thing, or it's a very confronting journey to be on, but it's also a very pleasurable one to be on when you identify there's areas that you'll push yourself in. You kind of want to be recognized as a can-do person. Like, I can do it. I'll have a go. It's a iteration of Australians. Have a go, like just we'll have a go. But sometimes you'll have a go at things, or you'll be in a job placement where you just think, I'm miserable for the rest of my life. You don't know any other way out of it. And one thing I've worked out, mate, is I don't want to sit in boardrooms with people, and that's not a good life. I was saying to my friends and colleagues the other day is that I really believe that the misery of the world is private equity. they're destroying. It's all about efficiency and cutting numbers and,
it's this fucking ridiculous and unsustainable continual growth. Like, how the hell can everything grow forever? That's not how things happen.
Well, if you ever want to know why there's no staff when you go to any places, it's because there's a private equity group behind it, or just they're maximizing profits through very, very thin efficiencies. And that doesn't excite me. I know that I'm not a person who is just pursuant of making money. I'm pursuant of a reasonable life, and also of reasonable people around me as well. That sort of thing is far more fun than sitting in a boardroom and trying to calculate how I can make a couple of $1 million or whatever. Mate, I'd rather go out just comfortable, but also knowing that I'm doing the things that I love. And I currently am. I'm currently doing the things that I love, and just having an example, using an example last week that I was having a bit of a step back from the dogs for a while. It's not the dogs. I love being around dogs. I always love being around dogs. Even when I was doing the staff coaching, going around and meeting the dogs and playing with them and being out in the daycare fields with them, and just generally discovering the personality of the dogs and sitting there while they're coming up and saying g'day to you. It's the best time of your life. You just don't realize how lucky you are when that's the sort of thing that you love. But when you're entrapped in a job or in a position with people who are just miserable shits, to each their own. Some people love that. Some people they love numbers. That's the game. It's crunching numbers. Playing Monopoly with life. That's their game. And I don't begrudge them for it. That's their thing. That's their shtick. Go for it. Do what makes you happy. It doesn't make me happy. I had to realize the hard way that. But yeah, you're right. I'm much happier. I'm happy teaching people. That's what I like doing. I like teaching people. I like showing people how to do things, and especially things that are going to be beneficial for them, and give them skills and capability to keep them safe at work, and also make their workplace more enjoyable.
Same. Well, so sounds great.
We had a completely different topic altogether. And we just
I don't know why we even bothered trying to come up with it, because then you just say something and I go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, that's storytelling 101, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for another episode of Canine Paradigm. As always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from, and then go to another one, do it there. Nobody checks. You're allowed to do it. Nobody cares. We care, though. We care very much for them. Receiving those delicious reviews, they're the best. 5-star ones are the most delicious.
Oh, yeah. More of those. Yeah, love the reviews. Well, we're just before we do the entire wrap up, don't forget, if you want to get educated in person and meet the lady herself, Dr. Melanie Uda is coming to Sydney and Melbourne in February, end of February. So 2 dates, you can find it in the discussion forum. If you want to book tickets, people have started booking tickets. There's tickets available. Get online, check them out. If you don't know where the links are, reach out to me in person and I'll hook you up so you can come down and spend a weekend with Dr. Melanie Uda in person.
Fuck yeah. All right. If you want to support the show, you can do that through Patreon. Jump into Patreon. A few bucks a month gets you a giant backlog of information as well as new stuff going forward. But actually, what it does is support us. So you could pay as much or as little as you like. At the $10 tier, I go live for a couple hours a month and just answer questions. Hit me with your dog training stuff. But the other way you could support the show is by getting into spring. There's links in the show notes. You could get yourself some cool t-shirts or wall tapestry. You could rep our brand. If you want to get in touch with us and if you want to find those links to the Dr. Melanie Uda seminar, jump into the Facebook discussion group. It's called the Canine Paradigm Discussion Group. There's 10,000 or more people in there, all being cool to each other. It's one of the last places on Facebook that I still go to jump into there. But if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com. Love you all. Goodbye.
Oh,